We're going to look at the creation of methods. A method allows us to write code and then repeatedly reuse it. We're going to work through task 2 of the method tutorial, which is to create a method where we can prompt our user to enter a value which can be interpreted as true or false. As we may know, the scanner provides the ability to read in a true or false value in the form of a boolean, but it requires the user to type true or false explicitly, and that's not the most user friendly. It'd be helpful if the user could type yes or okay or just the letter Y, and we shouldn't have to worry about whether or not they get that right in capital letters. So the things to be aware of about a method are that we need to give it a name, and methods can choose to return a value. Okay, so this method is going to prompt the user or retrieve a true or false value from the user in the form of a string. We'll need to return a boolean value because we want it to be used to get a yes no value. We're working in the main class, and we want to be able to call our method from the main method. And you'll note here the main method is declared as being static. So in order for us to be able to use that directly, our method must also be static. We won't always use a static keyword, but for now we will. So we're going to mark our method as being static. And the next thing we need to determine is what our method is going to return. Now we've already determined it's going to be true or false, which is a boolean, so we can mark that as being a boolean value. Okay. We need to give our method a name. I'm going to call it user confirmation. And we don't need to provide anything to this method in order for it to function. So we can provide what we call parameters. We're not going to do that, so we're just going to open and close brackets. If you look above, you'll see that the main method actually has a series of, or array of strings passed to it, which are named args for arguments. We're not interested in any parameters at this particular point in time. So that's the declaration, and I just need a set of braces in which I can write my code. Now, in order to get information from the user, we're going to have to use the scanner. So we can create a new scanner. I'll just call it input scanner for now. It needs to add an import statement, so I can quickly do that using the keyboard shortcut Alt and Enter, and you'll notice it adds that in at the top. And that's just going to be a new scanner. Oh, need the equal sign. A new scanner, and we're going to get our information using the console input, so we can use system.in to tell the scanner where we're looking for. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is read in a line from the user. Okay, so we'll do that by saying string user input equals input scanner dot next line. Okay. Now what we need to work out is whether the user has typed in something that is a positive value. For now, we'll just assume that if they put something that doesn't match any of our sort of yes or okay criteria, that they've meant no. Okay. So let's go about doing that, and we can say something like if our user input. Okay, now we're comparing strings here, so we might want to say is equal to, and then we can check whether they've typed okay. Now we're actually going to want to, they could type this in capitals, so we really want to just be comparing everything in lowercase to simplify things. So rather than having lots of statements where we say if user input dot to lowercase dot equals, we can simply convert our user input so that it is a lowercase version of itself. That way if the user types okay in capitals, this will still work. Okay. Now they might not type just okay, they might actually type true. So we can add an or statement and say if the user input equals, and then let's say they type true. Or they might say something like yes, yep, type Y or yeah or yep. Now we could check for all of those variants, but pretty much if they type anything that starts with a Y, then it's likely to be correct. So we could do another OR statement and say if the user input starts with a yes, so they'll take Y or yes, then we know that our method has done what we want it to do. Okay, so we've got all those checks, and if that's the case, we can just return true. Okay. However, if we've not found one of those, we can assume that they've typed no or some sort of other equivalent, and we can type return false. Okay, so I think it's probably time to put that to the test. What we can do is prompt the user. So we, in our main method, which runs automatically with our Java project, we can say please confirm if yes or no. Okay, and then we'll just output a message saying you replied positively or negatively. But in order to do that, we need to call this user confirmation method and store its value in a boolean variable. So we can do boolean confirmed. Oh, not question mark. And that's going to be equal to, and this is where we call our method. So we type user confirmation. And what happens here is we'll output a message to the user. We'll then jump to the user confirmation method. This code will execute, and we'll either return true or false, and confirm will take that value true or false that's returned from this method. We can then say if confirmed, we might write you replied positively, if I can spell positively, else you replied in the negative. So I think it's now time to run our program and test it. Okay, so we've been asked to confirm yes or no, so we can try different things. We'll try a Y for yes. We get you replied positively. Let's run that again. We'll type yes this time. We get the same response. We'll say okay. You replied positively. Let's try some negative ones. So we can say false. You replied in negative. And in fact, if we type anything that either doesn't start with a Y or isn't okay or true, then we'll get a false confirmation. So type some jargon. We get you replied in the negative. Okay, so that's a method as it stands. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, we've got a little warning here and it's telling us it can be simplified. Because this set of statements actually resolves to true or false, because we're saying if and then something which is either true or false, we can actually just return that. So we could simplify our code. Okay, I'll put it on a new line and we'll remove the old one. We'll take a copy of this and we'll say return, and we'll paste that in, put a semicolon at the end of the line. And that is functionally equivalent to doing this, but it reduces the amount of lines of code that we've got. Either is fine. This is just slightly simpler in terms of the number of lines of code.